Again, this is Cateside Jay. I'm with Cateside Mike. We are on the drive in. It is a wonderful 5:21 a.m. as we make this drive on a Saturday, which means the streets are dead except for a couple of kids careening around drunk. And we're going to talk first of all about Nick Diaz, because a lot of people have been waiting for him to get back in the octagon. He had the suspension for marijuana following the Anderson Silva fight in January 2015. He has not fought since that date. He then had a whereabouts suspension under USADA. Now, it didn't let them know where he was going to be 3 times within a 12-month span. That got him a suspension that was recently announced, and almost as soon as it was announced, it was up. Because it was retroactive. And all of a sudden, it looked like we might see Nick Diaz back relatively soon. Well, we're not going to be seeing him potentially for a long, long time. Nick Diaz charged with domestic assault via strangulation in Las Vegas by police Friday, which is yesterday as we record this. He's looking at some potentially serious charges with jail time. Depending on how it plays out, all of this is obviously allegedly, but based on statements that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department gave to MMA Junkie, Diaz was confrontational when arrested. The victim was transported to hospital. So it doesn't look good for Nick Diaz right now. The question before us at this point is Nick Diaz, and I'm going to throw Nate Diaz in here too, one of the probably most squandered opportunities, squandered careers in MMA history, given that both of them have pretty much sat out a good chunk of their prime.
I think that's fair. First I heard of it because I passed out,
Welcome to what happens when you work shift work.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to know what happened. I'm assuming that someone got in his face.
I should say, no, it was a domestic, so it was a significant other.
Wait. Oh, okay, I wasn't sure if...
Yeah.
Wow.
Victim was female, transferred to hospital.
That's really weird.
Not good, obviously.
No, that's, that's crazy. I was thinking maybe, he was out and some guy was picking a fight with him, and he's like, okay, here we go.
The Volcan Ozdemir.
Yeah. That is, I don't know. He's probably. He's probably really in some serious trouble.
Yeah. Now,
sure.
Again, going back to it, and it's all alleged and nothing's been proven in court, but it doesn't look good, and we don't know much about the circumstances, but just on the face of it, if he's gone for another couple of years. He's 34 right now. He's going to be 35 soon enough. And then it's a really short march to 40. And if you're competing, at welterweight, there's not a lot of time left. The higher weight classes, light heavyweight, and to some extent middleweight, you can get away with going a little longer because power goes last. Speed goes first. And in welterweight, you're kind of in that weird spot where you don't see a lot of 40-something welterweights going the way you see 40-something heavyweights, for example.
No.
So, if he's gone for quite a while, is this, a career squandered as far as the amount of time Nick Diaz, and again, I'm going to throw Nate in here for the debate. Are they an example of just one of the most squandered opportunities in MMA?
Well, I think there's probably a pretty good argument to say that they are. I think they're probably two guys that could be massive stars, potentially. But I also think part of that has to do with the attitudes that the fuck you attitude they carry. But I think that also hurts them as well. I wouldn't want to make judgment because we don't know everything that happened. It doesn't sound good. and it just sounds crazy to me. I don't know.
It's like, I've managed to shock you first thing in the morning.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm awake enough to be super coherent in what I think of it. And it's hard to think about fighting when it's something like that. Like his career could be over, right? Depending on what happens. Like I'm not sure if it's worst case scenario in this situation, he just snapped and choked out his girlfriend or whatever. Normal people don't do that, but if that's what happened, how long is he out for? And then beyond that, like, is it like what caused him to do that? Does he need help? Does he have anger? Like, what's going on there? You know what I mean? There's a lot.
Well, I think on the face of it, I think Nick Diaz is one of those guys who's probably needed help for a long time. A story came out a while ago about him losing his girlfriend when he was younger. She passed away, and it was a heavy blow to him. And I'm just speculating here, but I think Nick Diaz is a troubled guy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of him acting out, and a lot of who he is, probably stems from that. But, if it is what it is at face value, it's not good, shouldn't have happened, obviously condemn it. But from a career standpoint, man, the what ifs with the Diaz brothers. What if Nate Diaz had taken a few fights after that second Conor McGregor fight? So going to Nate, because like I said, I want to throw both of them in there because they're two peas in a pod, and obviously they're brothers and they're very close and they're very similar.
Very similar.
But man, he's been on the shelf since 2016. I mean, so has. Conor McGregor went on to fight Eddie Alvarez and win that second title, then took the boxing match against Floyd Mayweather. Nate Diaz, the biggest news that we heard from him was him showing up on Ariel's show for an episode and giving a little tour of his house. It's just unbelievable. How much bigger of a star could he have been had he taken a few fights and done well in them?
Well, that's the thing too. If you put it in if you frame it as he had a couple fights after that Conor fight, let's say he wins those, he's one of the top guys. I think he's one of the top guys. I think a lot of it has to do, I got to say, when I first started when I was first into fighting, these guys showed up, and I was really watching them. I wasn't crazy about it because of their attitudes, but the more you watch them, and especially in the sport and how it is, they're outspoken, they have that fuck you attitude, and that's appealing to a lot of people. I think if these guys were active and they were around and they were given a spotlight, I definitely think they would have they'd be some stars. They'd be megastars.
Now, can we argue that they haven't been given the spotlight? Because realistically, Nate Diaz became a top draw the second he beat Conor McGregor, and people were super interested. He did the rematch. He lost. It was a close fight. It was a good fight. But
short notice.
The first one was,
one.
The first one was short notice. And that it had all the building blocks, and he was showing up on talk shows. I remember him showing up on, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel. And you're like, wow, all of a sudden Nate Diaz, he's going to be a top draw. He's getting $1 million a fight minimum. And then nothing ever happened after that. And, he was saying, well, you haven't given me anything that interests me. Lol at your fight, talking about Eddie Alvarez. But what was it going to take to interest Nate Diaz other than the third McGregor fight? Because the way things went, the amount of opportunities that seemed to come along, you're going to have to resurrect Muhammad Ali, cross him with a cyborg, put him in the octagon to get Nate Diaz to be interested. So in that sense, it feels like Nate Diaz is at least partially to blame for, again, squandering part of his prime. Nick Diaz, definitely in the same boat. And right now, they're both in legal hot water because in addition to Nick Diaz with the domestic violence charges, you've got Nate Diaz assaulting Clay Guida at Combate Americas last week, where Gabriel Gonzalez from K-Side was there, got to witness some of that fun. So he's under investigation in California. Diaz arrested under investigation in Vegas. It's mind-boggling how talented these guys are, and the fact that they can't get it together. Mike Tyson managed to fight relatively consistently until he finally went to prison. I mean, it wasn't like he was sitting huge spans of his career that I remember.
Well, this is the thing I immediately thought, and you're right. There's definitely responsibility on these guys to be active. Realistically, let's say Nate takes that fight with Alvarez, right? Smashes him. Has another fight, smashes. I don't know who we fight after that, but let's say it'd be another top 10 guy at the time. Smashes him. Maybe he can talk with UFC and say, you know what, let's do the Conor thing again.
And that's just it. If he had done something and done well, I mean, they want to make money fights.
Yeah. Now, I also think, too, that the attitude of the Diaz brothers probably, they don't strike me as being extremely easy to work with as far as a promoter and fighter goes. And the UFC at times is not always the most fighter-friendly promotion. I can see there being friction there and that causing some issues as well. And going back to the whole Diaz brothers fuck you attitude. And then to go a step further, we talk about Tyson. Tyson had people around him kind of guiding him through that, both good and bad. Right? It didn't work out for him in the end. People took advantage of him and stuff. I don't know. Do the Diaz brothers have that? And if they do, do the Diaz brothers listen to these people they have around them, telling them, hey guys, if you want that Conor fight, go smash Alvarez. Go smash the guy after that. Don't give anyone a reason to say, you know what, we don't need to do that fight again.
And that's interesting because I was thinking about that, and I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, Tyson did have people around him. They were the wrong people, ultimately.
Kept him fighting, though.
Kept him fighting.
Maybe not to his benefit, but...
Now, when I look at who the Diaz brothers have around them, well, the Scrap Pack, I mean, Jake Shields seems to have a level head. Gilbert Melendez seems to have a level head. How is some of that not rubbing off at this point? And I mean, to a certain extent, yeah, they're their own people. They're going to make their own decisions. They're going to make their own mistakes. But it is baffling what we have seen or what we haven't seen in terms of the Diaz brothers in the last few years. And now there's a chance that if both of these cases go badly for Nate and Nick, we might not be seeing them for a while. They might be doing their scraps in a prison yard. And that is just a disappointing thought.
Well, that could be. We could see no more. These guys can never fight again potentially. Because part of me thinks that they like fighting, but ultimately it doesn't seem like they really care. Like they do, but they don't. And it's like if it works out, fine. If it doesn't, I'm happy doing marathons. I'm happy doing other stuff.
There's something, I don't remember if it was Nate or Nick, and it might have been Nick who said he doesn't like fighting. He hates fighting. But he's good at it, and he does it, and it pays well. So maybe his heart's not in it. I don't know. It's just incredibly sad. I feel, we don't know the circumstances. Obviously, you've got a victim who you've got to feel for. This shouldn't have happened. If it did indeed happen the way it's said, it's all, again, alleged, and I got to be careful to say that because nothing's been proven in court. It's way too early. We'll probably find out more information later in the day, try and get a hold of Las Vegas Metro Police and the Clark County Detention Center where he was held, see if we can figure out a little bit more. We talked to the district attorney, but who knows. In any case, it doesn't look good for the Diaz brothers. Now, we talked about this a little before we started this little podcast. Someone who did look good at Bellator 200, Michael Venom Page, essentially made Caveman Rickels quit. And if you know who the Caveman is, that is mind-boggling because he is a tough dude. Biggest test of Page's career. Passed him with flying colors. Did the showboating. Caught him with a right hand in the second round. Opened up a nasty gash. You had Caveman pointing to it saying, I'm done. That's it. TKO via verbal submission. Man, Michael Page looks like a hybrid of Anderson Silva and Lyoto Machida with that karate style. He comes out after the fight wearing the glove of Thanos. He says, I'm just going to snap my fingers and take everybody out. He's promotable. He's 31 years old now. What is next for him? Do you put him? He's 13-0. He didn't fight in over a year. He took time off to take a boxing match. Sound familiar? Although not on the same scale as you know who.
Yeah.
But where does he go from here? Do you put him in a title fight now? Do you put him against a Rory McDonald?
You know what? I haven't seen the fight. I missed it, and I feel like garbage because I missed it. I'm gonna have to watch it today. But and Rickels is legit. He's I've interviewed the guy. He's got that fighter's attitude. So when you were telling me what happened, I was like, no way. I'm like, he had to have been hurt, or maybe we're at a point where these fighters are looking out for themselves more. And when you think about fighters, at least historically in MMA, these guys are going out on their shields. Maybe it's a situation where Rickels was hurt. Maybe he felt like he was already down in the fight, and he said, you know what? If I have this really bad cut over my eye, I'm already down in this fight. There's no chance I'm coming out of this. And he's like, maybe it was a situation like that. I'm very curious to see it. Very curious to maybe hear from him and see what he thought. To see what happened with that. But on the other side, I'm not taking anything away from MVP. He goes out and it sounds like he put on everything you'd want to see from someone like that. You see guys who are a high skill level. They do have the charisma. They go out to be able to do that and actually put away guys who are legit or more than legit. That's huge. Is that deserving of the title shot? I guess it goes back to how do you want to run your promotion, right?
Well, the other question is, and it's the fight that everyone's wanted to see forever. And, they both had the flying knee knockouts, and that's Paul Daly. Everyone wanted to see MVP versus Daly. There was a ton of heat, and it kept falling apart for whatever reason. And then Daly, almost said it was done with it or not on his terms. And then Daly's had his own beef with the promotion, which, Scott Coker said, hey, I'm going to talk to Daly this week while I'm in London. We're going to hash this out. Because I know when we spoke to Daly, when Cage-Side's Gabriel spoke to Daly at Bellator 199, he told us nothing had been hashed out. He hadn't spoken to Scott Coker. He still wasn't happy. And then when we saw in the Fish fight, well, you got Daly, talking to the camera, saying this fight's boring. He's basically trash-talking his own fight while it's going on. So Daly is definitely not happy. We don't know if he's going to stick around. I think it's a fight that would sell. But, man, I almost think at this point, at 31, MVP is right at his prime. And you really want to see him take that step up. Is Rickels enough for a title shot? I don't know. In Bellator, that's a tough one because you've got Lorenz Larkin, you've got Paul Daly, you've got Rory with the belt, you've got Douglas Lima. Rickels is a guy who fought at 155 for the bulk of his career, had a title shot against, I believe it was Chandler at 155. So it's tough. But you want to see him go against top guys at this point. And you wonder what he would be like in the UFC. And I hate to do that because Bellator's done really, really well and built a solid 170-pound class at this point.
But the UFC's 175. They're different. That's I would say their strongest weight class. Well,
one of the strongest weight classes.
Historically, they've always had a very strong division. You know what? Thinking about it, I say maybe give him one more fight and then do the McDonald fight.
Yeah.
Get him like a really good challenge. Because I always think, you have guys who go out and there's good, but sometimes the matchup is in their favor. They have the really good performance of their night to really see who is this guy. And I've had that we've had that conversation about Dillashaw, where Dillashaw fought Barao. Yeah. He looked unstoppable, but then he's kind of gone up and down since then. And I think that was a really good matchup for him. Not taking anything away from Dillashaw, he's a fantastic fighter. But when he fought Barao, he looked out of this world good. know what I mean?
Now, I will throw out there that when he lost to Cruz, a lot of people, myself included, saw that fight going another way. That having been said, getting back to MVP, you know what? I agree. It is probably too soon for the title fight. Interestingly enough, Musashi, after winning the middleweight title later in the night, actually called out Rory. He wants Rory McDonald next. Champ versus champ fight.
That would be interesting.
I think that's a fight you got to make.
That would be really interesting. Yeah. The other thing too is, and this is just a thing in fighting, and especially in MMA, people are we're generally very quick when you see a very good performance from a fighter to say, man, give this guy a shot, right? And I think because the excitement of like when you see that, and it's just the performance is so good, so dominant. You're like, you just start thinking, man, I want to see this guy fight this guy. And the hype goes off the rails. And then a lot of times, more often than not, I would say, it is a situation where, good fighters have great fights. That doesn't make them a great fighter. I'm not saying he's not a great fighter, but you know what I mean?
Well, definitely. And MMA is a sport where it's, what have you done for me lately? What was your last performance? And you're right, the second some guy gets a big win, we start talking title shot.
Yeah.
We start going, wow, this guy's ready. And you know what? I'm probably doing it right now with MVP.
I was going to call him.
No, I'll call myself on it. The thing is, he is so damn marketable. He's got that flying knee finish. He's got the flashy style. He's got the ability on the microphone. He's, bringing the Pokeballs or whatever they are and the Glove of Thanos into the cage after wins. I mean,
for a promoter, that's everything you want.
Everything you could ask for. And you know who it really reminds me of? And this is a fight that I would love to see. This is like a dream fight. Although maybe they would just cancel each other out and have a boring hug fest. Israel Adesanya, the last stylebender, seems so reminiscent of Michael Venom Page in different promotions. But I'm just both of them too with the promotional ability, that would just blow you away. But I think the more I think about it, you got to do the daily fight. You got to do it now, if you can. Who cares if Daly's coming off a loss? It's not the UFC. You don't got to book winner. So book the daily fight. And if MVP looks as good as he did against Rickels, against Paul Daly, then you book him. The other thing is, to an extent, that is still protecting MVP. And there's a question of whether or not you should protect fighters as a promoter, because it's MMA and you want to have the best guys fighting the best guys regardless of ability or style. But we know the big question mark for MVP is still wrestlers. I spoke to Caveman Rickels about it. He said, hey, I'm not a wrestler, I never have been. You wouldn't want to see my takedown stats in Bellator. He's like, I probably got about one takedown, if that, in my career. He goes, I'm going to go out there and bang. He did, and it did not go well. Now, Paul Daly is not a wrestler either. We know how he feels about wrestlers. So it is for both of them, it's a stylistic matchup that works. And you know what?
I feel like you're opening the can of worms.
I might be.
This whole thing.
But if he then goes up against Rory and his takedown defense isn't there, at least as a promotion, you didn't squander, a potentially huge matchup by running MVP into a wrestler. Because at this point, at 31, again, I'm going to say this is his prime, this is his peak. Do it, in the next 12 months, 2 fights.
See, and that's a lot. See, everything you just said, my mind is going here. I'm starting to wake up. It goes back to the first, when these things come up, the first thing I think is this spectacle or is it sport? And as a promotion, when you think of it, it's got to put these promotions in tough spots, right? Like, do you protect the guy? But then I think you should have confidence if this guy is going to be your guy, right, or the guy in that division. I don't think protecting him is good for anyone, right? But if it's not, you're right. You squander the opportunity to have that big payoff, all the attention and everything. And that's the first thing I think of. Like, are we going to treat it like the best guys fighting the best guys? Are we making fights that fans want to see?
Well, I think in Bellator, to a certain extent, that question was answered when they got rid of the tournament format. I mean, Bellator was founded on the tournament format. That's what Bjorn Rebney envisioned. He envisioned a league, and that's what they had early on. And I was a fan. I was on the Bellator bandwagon pretty early, back when Eddie Alvarez was still there, back when Hector Lombard was still there, back when Ben Askren was still there, back when Cole Conrad was the heavyweight champion, a guy who trained with Brock Lesnar, who retired undefeated because he couldn't make enough money in MMA and didn't have the personality or the it factor that Brock Lesnar had. I was big on the Bellator tournament format, but it seemed like maybe the network or Viacom or whoever it was, they thought they could, eventually get more eyeballs on the product if they, started booking, the star matchups and started getting away from it. And they did. They dropped it. Scott Coker came in. Scott Coker has done some good things to the promotion, and he has brought back tournaments now and then, like the Bellator World Heavyweight Grand Prix. And you can argue whether that is the best against the best because it's a very hand-picked bracket as far as who's in there, and several of them aren't heavyweights. But, yeah, if we're looking at it that way, I get what you're saying, but I think the question has been answered. Bellator is a fight promotion, not a league, just like the UFC is a fight promotion, not a league. As much as they sometimes would like to position themselves as otherwise. And I will say, it's almost what day... what situation are they in where they try to be one or the other?
I think you're right on that. And realistically, I think when you're at, the UFC is the biggest promotion in the world as far as MMA goes. Bellator is definitely one of the top promotions in the world. It's, has the blueprint been set by the UFC as, we're making these bigger spectacle fights that draw more casual fans, and that's what we have to do to succeed. Is that? Because that's what it feels like. That you have fights that, hey, this guy's number one, this guy's number two, but then especially in the era of Conor McGregor, I feel like a lot of that is, from a promotional standpoint, doesn't matter so much. Because you put that guy in any fight, people want to watch him.
Now, here's the other factor to consider. Who's number one in Bellator? Well, that's the champion. Who's number two? Who's number three? Who's number four? They don't have the same transparency. For all that we criticize the UFC's ranking systems, voted by members of the media who, you don't know who, you don't know what members, you don't know how many, but they do have a ranking system visible for all to see. It's on their website.
I feel like that's better.
Yeah.
I feel like it's better, or it's easier for Bellator because they don't have that. Because when a fight is set up, you can't look at the standings and say, well, wait a second. This guy's number two. Why is this guy? You know what I mean? Like it's easier to criticize.
Like who number two is in Bellator is who Bellator says number two is.
Yeah. Which I think is, I don't know if it's right, but it's better from a promotional standpoint, I think, because it's just like, this is the champion, we're going to pick the best fight for that champion. It's not necessary. And maybe if we are very clearly in an era where not so much league or promotion and spectacle, boxing kind of thing, maybe that's a better way to have it. Why have rankings? Why have fighter rankings? There's a champion, there's everyone else. And it might add a little excitement, right? Like going back to Ultimate Fighter, you had these guys competing for a shot at the title. And that was exciting. At Sarah won a belt. That was crazy. Never forget it. And if that's where the sport is, and it feels like that's where it's going to stay, do we need fighter rankings? Look at what you've done. This is what you've done. You open up the can. Then here we go.
The ever popular can of worms. The entire time we were talking about number two, all I could think of was Austin Powers. Who does number two work for?
Not Bellator.
Bellator, number two is who they say number two is. MVP, however, is a talent and probably the number one fighter in that promotion when it comes to the flash, the creative striking, the showboating, and I think we can agree he needs another step up. Maybe not a title shot. Let's say not a title shot, but it's time to book him. And in the meantime, the Diaz brothers, I want to say, are probably the most squandered careers at this point in MMA. And there's probably an exception somewhere. Someone's going to bring up somebody who did something incredibly stupid, like War Machine. Well, he never had the talent. Alexis Vila, who was in the news recently, well, he got into the game too late. There's all kinds of other examples of horrific situations, tragic situations.
I don't think anyone at the skill level with the almost unlimited potential of the Diaz brothers, right? There are fighters. There are good fighters. The Diaz brothers, they could be, in that conversation.
They could and should have been MMA superstars. Yeah. They're still stars, but we might not be seeing either of them fight either again, and that's a sad prospect.
Super unfortunate.
All right. I am K-Side Jay. Again, this is K-Side Mike. We're going to sign off because the drive-in is almost over. Our day begins. It's probably not going to be as entertaining as this was. But, we will hear from you, see from you next time. Leave some comments on the YouTube channel, leave some comments on the website, whatever you'd like. We'll talk to you again.
See you guys.